aspects of freedom. I think those are ideal times to also bring out that there are people enslaved today, and that the enslavement is not so difficult that we cannot affect it. So I'd say the moral persuasion and pressure can be given by the religious communities. And our people in our communities can call Congress. It strikes me Congress responds to pressure. I mean, I don't think that's brain science. I'm pretty dumb about politics, and it strikes me. You put enough pressure, people respond.
Go ahead. I'd say one thing about that, which I think the most important thing that Texas can do, and Texas does not get enough credit for this, Texas can hold the line where we're at. We have not gone the way of states like Arizona, Mississippi, Georgia, passing harsh immigration crackdowns. This is a state, unlike our liberal friends in California, they're called liberal, but they were the voters who chose to vote to deny benefits to undocumented immigrants. In this state, we offer in-state tuition to undocumented immigrants. In this state, we don't round people up. We don't ban, quote, sanctuary cities. Some of that's being talked about on the campaign trail right now, some harsh immigration rhetoric, but even my friend Dan Patrick admits that we can't deport 12 million people. So the most important thing probably that Texas can do, and the Texas Republican Party can do when they go to their convention coming up in June, is continue to support a guest worker program, which the Texas Republican Party does. In the last legislative session last year, there was no immigration legislation even considered, and a lot of people gave the Republican Party credit for that, for the fact that they support a guest worker program. So I think the most important thing that Texas can do is hold the line, stay where we're at, and I think a lot of people need to continue, as the Cardinal said, to continue to pressure the congressman, because that's what they're responsible for.
Cardinal, I know you have a schedule. I want to thank you very much once again for rearranging your schedule to join us this morning. I appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure, and it's great people here who have a great deal of formation. From the point of view of any religious communities, stay with it. It's a significant issue. It's not going away, thank God, and we can push it. Thank you.
One of the questions is I noted Ms. Axelrod testified before the House Foreign Affairs Committee and their subcommittees. The question is, has senior executives at Delta met with members of Congress? And if so, how was the conversation related to immigration reform, and what was the reaction from corporate America?
I think it's two-part. And the answer is yes. Again, I go back to when Delta initially got involved with this issue, which, as has been stated, this is still relatively new. A question that we get all the time, where's the data? We have these numbers that range from, whatever it is, a number of people who are involved in slavery, and then to X, amount. I think the data is still too new to determine, what is actually happening. We just know that there's not. So, having said that, I think getting involved literally back in 2010, Delta got involved because of our senior leader and our CEO, Richard Anderson, who again said, it is what we need to do as an airline. Yes, there are opportunities to talk about economic sanctions and economic issues, and I'll deal with that later. But as a result of Richard saying, get out there, make it happen, we're going to get involved as an organization. So have our other senior leaders. In fact, Ed Bastian, who is our president, his wife, Anna Bastian, works very closely with this specific area, working with the Polaris Project and other organizations. They have gotten in line with, I don't want to get into the political pieces, obviously, because there's proprietary pieces here, but suffice it to say, they are in line with doing the right thing as a morally and socially conscious airline. And they've done everything that we've been asked to do, putting in place policies down to the supply chain pieces that have gone far beyond the risk mitigation.
Thank you. Yes. My understanding is Delta requires even its vendors.
That's absolutely correct. And literally tomorrow I'm meeting with a large vendor that supplies contractors to Delta. Frankly, they're our largest vendor. I'm meeting with them to roll out the training of all of their employees as well, frontline and behind the scenes. So very urgent.
And Randy, this is so critical. I'll tell you what, I commit to buying my next airplane ticket from Delta. You got to support this. You really got to support this. But you know, the other side of it too, in relation to what she's laying out for us, is that there are so many different ways to attack this issue. Principally the issue of human trafficking as a whole, and that is to make sure that more corporations like Delta come forward. You got to remember that several years ago in the city of Houston, our lead person for conventions and for conventions was challenged as to why he charged so much money on the city credit card for hosting some people at one of our local cabarets. And he said, y'all told me to secure the convention. You told me do whatever it takes to secure the convention. When I asked these guys what they wanted to do while they were in Houston, they wanted to go to a cabaret, so I did. I took them, and we got the convention. Nothing happened to them. That kind of attitude across the corporate community has to be changed as well. And as much as it happened with those city dollars at that time, there are still some companies that offer, the corporate dollar to host and ties the business over that kind of environment, that kind of atmosphere. It's imperative that we encourage our companies to take on that leadership attitude and not tolerate that perpetuated or feeding. The other side of it too is that we have to continue to raise the level of awareness. And so one thing that I would invite everyone to do is to download your free mobile phone app, iWatch Harris County, and work to report any suspicious activity as it relates to human trafficking so that we can have additional data to build our resources and our operations and our strategies towards this. And I want to apologize. Senator Sylvia Garcia is here, my neighbor and my friend who got me into public life. She is one of the most committed individuals to this challenge as well. And so, as we talk about what Texas can do, is to support the initiatives that Senator Garcia and others like her are leading, and that is to make sure that Texas does not go the way of Arizona and other places with some very harsh positions and approaches to immigration and immigrants as it relates. There's victims in that. We have to do everything we can to take them out of the shadows and support them in every way possible.
How are we able to prosecute the traffickers if their victims are being deported?
There's another level to that, and you're absolutely right, Randy. Before I forget, I would encourage everyone to buy. I have no stock in the book, but it's a good book. It's called Human Trafficking Around the World. It's written by Stephanie Hepburn. It is a very good book because it's almost a textbook as to, number one, what's occurring with human trafficking around the world, but it's also a good textbook as to what is wrong with our current immigration system, our work visas, and the way we process the visas for victims of human trafficking. This is one of the issues that I've challenged my staff with, and that is that a key question to granting a visa for a victim of human trafficking is, will you cooperate with law enforcement? Now, that process doesn't have all of the elements of working with victims as we typically do with all other types of victims. You got to imagine that if we rescue a victim of human trafficking, that person ends up being an undocumented person who's been exploited to all kinds of harsh degrees, as we've been hearing. And you have a law enforcement officer saying, will you testify against that person, that human trafficker? Put yourself in that person's shoes. If you stumble with your response, if you say, I'm not sure, I don't know, then you're denied. Then we do put you immediately in the process of deportation, or to be handled by ICE better yet. And so we have to address that. We have to look at that from a better perspective on how we deal with our victims. But to that end, Randy, we have to, when we have victims of human trafficking or potential witnesses to these types of crimes, we have to take a different approach at how we deal with those victims, irrespective of their immigration status. If we need them to prosecute cases, then we have to treat them back.
Randy, I think it goes to the point of what comprehensive immigration reform would do, which is separate people we're mad at from people who actually did bad things, right? And this is the conversation that people are starting to have about marijuana, for example. You have the governor of Texas, Rick Perry, on the Jimmy Kimmel show making pot jokes, right? Whereas a Republican governor of the state of Texas would have never done that before, right? It would be, no, it shouldn't do that, right? No question. We have so many people who are not the bad guys, who are we're wasting, I would say, wasting resources on law enforcement dollars, ICE, all of the different agencies that get involved when people go through this process, and instead, and people who like to rail against the drug traffickers, the people who are in our city to do bad things. Police need to be, and Sheriff, I think you would agree, police need to be able to go after the people who are actually harming our citizens, and not so worried about the guy who's bringing me water at Pappas.
The Cardinal noted what's needed is comprehensive immigration reform. We've got a diverse political group of not putting Delta to that. As Dr. Kleinberg and I both know, through the 3 immigration summits, we've reached out to Republicans to participate, Republican officials who've politely told us they're scared of certain factions of the party, that they will either draw an opponent or they have an opponent and do not wish to participate. Is the primary election process getting in the way of the political will to do the right thing?
It's the process we have. So, and look, what gets in the way of people doing the right thing is people not showing up to vote. This is a state of 30 million people, in which about 1.5 million people who vote in the Republican primary get to decide all the big decisions at the statewide level, right? And because of congressional districts, the way they're drawn, and this is true for Republicans and Democrats all across the country, the members of the House are safe in the districts where they are because the district is drawn that way for them, or where it's drawn for their party. And so whoever panders to the base of that party wins that congressional seat. And this plays out in this issue just brilliantly. You see it. The Senate, in a huge bipartisan way, those people who represent entire states voted for comprehensive immigration reform. The House, where everything's gerrymandered and the primary process is the only thing that matters to get to be a part of the club, that's where there's a problem. And so the fact that I've heard a lot of people start to say that, even as liberals or as Democrats have started to cross over more and vote in the Republican primary in Texas because they know that that's where the biggest decisions are being made. I don't know that that's necessarily the best way to do it. People have to decide that for themselves. But if people don't like what's happening, they don't like what the government's doing, or in this case, not doing, they need to show up.
Randy, I just want to add to that. Scott's right. But the challenge to allowing the primaries to draw or to create positions of those individuals who are ultimately going to be elected is that once you stake your flag out there so far off to an extreme point, it's extremely hard to pull that flag up and adjust it later on. Because then there's a primary next cycle around. So whoever has an audience, one thing I would encourage, whoever has an audience with any elected official that has an extreme point of view on this issue that is not conducive to effective enforcement of human trafficking or an effective immigration process, I encourage you to have them over coffee, have strong but intimate but strong conversations with them, encouraging them to be much more responsible in their approaches. Because I know a lot of the officials that I've heard different things. I'm actually proud of somebody like my friend Ted Cole. He was pretty far out there, and he's made a good adjustment, and I respect that. And we have to encourage others to do the same thing. The good work, the best public policy is done in the middle. It's not done far off to the left, far off to the right. It's done right in the middle, and that's what we got to encourage people to get to.
Do a last question, and let you all do a summary. For victims of human trafficking who are undocumented, there is the T-Visa program to help them. However, in the last 10 years, only 3,000 T-Visas have been given to victims, even though 5,000 T-Visas are allowed by Congress each year. How can the T-Visa program be changed for it to be more effective and feasible for victims?
Well, just like I was saying earlier, we've got to make some adjustments on asking the question and what process that we ask that question about whether the victims will cooperate with law enforcement. We have to allow for some kind, and I don't think it exists, some kind of appeal process that if they answer initially no, but then come back around and are willing to support the investigative process, we got to allow for some adjustment right now. Right now, there's none. Once you answer no, once you're denied, or you say you're not going to cooperate, it's over and done. I have worked hard to try to change a couple of those, and it's almost impossible to create. So we got to make some adjustments in that regard. And we have to make sure that attorneys, I guess what I'm trying to get to is that we have to make sure that the victims out there know who are true immigration specialists, like Charles Foster and Gordon Kwan. You got to make sure, because a criminal defense attorney isn't necessarily the best person to talk to about immigration issues. So we have to make sure that those folks are well informed, and we as a community provide some portals or process to effectively inform the community who are the good players out there that can help you if you work with.
Your comments made me think back to a question that was asked earlier about whether or not organizations, or maybe some of the NGOs, should come together. And my response is perhaps yes, they should. Because not everyone is trained to work in this area. I would say in the last 2 years, I literally get a call maybe 3 or 4 times a week from a small entity who wants to get involved. They're looking for dollars to get involved. And so we're trying to educate them on first, from an awareness perspective, what getting involved means. And you're absolutely right with, finding an authentic and verifying who you should work with. I currently work with a local organization in Atlanta, GAIN, working with individuals who want to help persons obtain their T visas. And so we're working with these individuals so that they really understand the victims, know how to communicate with the victims, and create a safe dialogue in order to make that happen. But that resonates with me, because so many people are saying, we do whatever it is in human trafficking. We want to say, well, what does that mean? And so we want to educate them in that area in a huge way.
You each want to do closing comment?
Well,
We're going to take
Matt-
action as the Cardinal did, but go ahead.
Matt was going to put the numbers up to the congressman. That's all I was going to say.
Okay.
Call these guys, right? To that last question, and just to have a closing thought for the whole thing, it is indicative of what is true about most of our immigration law is that either people don't understand it, or they don't, or it doesn't in any way match up with reality, social reality or economic reality. And the lawmakers that are making these decisions are not engaged in a real conversation about fixing those problems. It's all about rhetoric instead.
On behalf of the AJC and the Kinder Institute, I want to thank you all. Letty for coming in from Atlanta, Sharon, Scott, giving your time this morning, and for all of you joining. We've had 3 immigration summits, this being the 3rd. It's been education, information. We're looking for everybody to take action. We've asked everybody, your cell phones have either been on mute or vibrate. To conclude, we're asking you to take out your cell phones. The last page of the booklet has every Greater Houston area member of Congress phone number. If you'll take out your cell phone, call your member of Congress to Washington, D.C., ask them to schedule a vote on immigration, take a vote on immigration. As the Cardinal said, it's only with the action, as opposed to just coming, the advocacy that's going to make a difference. So before you leave, in fact, right now, if you just take your cell phones out at your table, the numbers are up there, but they're also in the booklets. If you're not sure who your member of Congress is, if you get out your voting card, it's a congressional district, that number is listed, and you'll find it in the booklet. And once again, appreciate you all participating and joining us this morning.
Randy, if I can real quickly, to just make things a little bit exciting and controversial, encourage them to include pathway to citizenship.
Yes.